Poison, drowning, claw, or knife. So many ways to take a life. What is up, everybody? Welcome back once again to Hot Toys Hotline. As always, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel and drop a like on this video. I would very much appreciate it. Well, as you can see, sitting here in front of me, I have the 1/6 scale Trick or Treat Studios Trick or Treat Sam 1/6 scale figure. I've been waiting for this one for quite a while. I've had it on pre-order since day one, so I'm very excited to check this out with you all. But with that being said, guys, let's get right into it. Let's take a look at the packaging here. As you guys know, I read that awesome quote there at the top from the film. Definitely really nice attention to detail there. You can see Sam sitting here on the front looking ever so menacing with the blood dripping off of his sharpened lollipop. Moving down, you do have the Trick or Treat logo, the deluxe 1/6 scale Sam figure by Trick or Treat Studios. Around the side, you do have the Trick or Treat logo again, and then moving it around to the back, we do have Sam here sitting with his jack-o'-lantern, looking very menacing in the dark there, I might add. But if we flip it back around to the front, there is another cool thing about this packaging that we've seen before. We actually have a magnetic cover that opens up, and we are greeted not only with our figure and all of the accessories, but if I slide it over a little bit, you can see we have Sam's Rules of Halloween, and we have a nice little brutal looking comic strip here. Sam terrorizing his victims with that lollipop. But here we go, guys. Don't forget your rules of Halloween. Wear a costume, hand out treats, never blow out a jack-o'-lantern, and always check your candy. That last one especially, unfortunately, has been very true in today's society, as you guys know, throughout the years. So definitely really nice attention to detail, especially if you've seen the film here, guys. But with that being said, now what I'm going to do is remove the plastic clamshells out of the packaging, and I will lay it out in front of us so you can see how everything arrives to you when it lands on your doorstep. Alright, and as you can see, guys, a decent amount of stuff. This was only a $200 figure. I know he's shorter in stature. However, I do think they included a lot of stuff for the price. And definitely can't wait to take a look at this display base. This is actually really cool, and I'm very impressed by it. So I can't wait to show it to you guys. But as always, guys, let me take all of the accessories and the figure out of the packaging, and we'll take a closer look at all of the details. First up, we do have Sam's burlap sack here, and as you can see, this is really nicely weathered, really nicely detailed here, especially around the edges where it would kind of drag across the ground or sit on the ground, what have you. Obviously, Sam may keep candy, some dangerous objects in here, what have you. But really nicely done. Really nice thick material. You do have a real string here. Just overall, really high quality. I'm actually very impressed with this accessory. I think it's really nicely done. And I'm actually very much considering posing him with this because this is very iconic to the character. So definitely really cool in my opinion. And next, as you can see, we do have all of our hands. Of course, there are two hands pre-installed on the figure, and we'll take a look at that in the figure portion of the video. I think these are pretty nicely painted. The skin paint could be a little better. It's not top tier by any means, but I do think it looks pretty good. As you can see, there is some weathering throughout on those gloves, and you may be able to notice it if I can get it to focus a little bit here. You can see there is a bit of a wet texture towards the tips of his fingers. I think that's a really nice touch. It adds a bit of realism to it that you kind of lose sometimes with Trick or Treat. So I think they did a really good job here. You can see he's got some dirt and grime on his fingers as well. Again, overall, pretty nicely done. They are well sculpted as well. Really no complaints about that. And as you can see, this is an open, relaxed hand. You do have an open gripping hand here. This is another open gripping hand. And you also have this closer gripping hand for probably the lollipop. So definitely wish there were more hands. Again, there are two pre-installed. But as I always say, you always would love to see more. So that's all we got for the hands. Next, as you could see, we do have our lollipops. Now, I will say, I did notice on these guys, the QC was a little rough. As you can see, I've got some like scratches and scuffs on the surface, and there's like a chunk of plastic there on the back. But with that being said, I do think these are really cool looking. If you've seen the movie, I don't want to spoil what he does with the lollipop, but it's definitely a really funny, unexpected scene in my opinion. So definitely a must-have for this character. A very iconic set of accessories here. And as you can see, you have an uneaten lollipop and you have one with a big bite taken out of it. So definitely really nice that they included both. I'm a big fan of that. Next, we do have our Holly Ho candy bar. But it's not just any candy bar. You guys remember our rules of Halloween. Always check your candy. As you can see, someone didn't check their candy here because we do have a full razor blade coming out of the candy. Now, I will say, I think this is a very convincing effect. I think the metal paint is really nicely done. I think it's convincing to look like real metal. And I think the blood on the blade looks really cool as well. I definitely think this is one of the cooler accessories. And as you can see, it's pretty highly detailed there. Holly ho, caramel, peanuts, and nougat, sugar sweet, charged snack. Really nicely done though. I think it's really highly detailed, and overall I have no complaints about that, and I think it's a really neat accessory to include this figure. Next, easily one of the coolest accessories, if not the coolest accessory, is this jack-o'-lantern here, looking ever so menacing. And as you can see, you do have a flame effect that goes from orange to yellow towards the tip. Definitely really fitting for the character. But the cool thing about this one is battery powered, so it does light up, and if you flip it to the bottom, you can see there's one of those classic little tabs there. You pull it out and you do have an activation switch here, and you turn it on, and as you can see, you are greeted with a flickering jack-o'-lantern. That is super cool. Definitely really nicely done, and the details on this guy are pretty nice as well. As you can see, there's a bit of rotting and stuff here and there. Overall, I think they did a great job on this accessory, and as I said, I really love the light flickering effect. If I can kind of cover that up, you can see it. Really, really neat. I mean, what more can you ask for? This is really cool. Definitely a contender for one of the best accessories alongside that candy bar. I'm a huge fan of this. Next, this is something that I definitely wanted to highlight because I think Trick or Treat Studios kind of went above and beyond on the design on this one. This is obviously our display base, guys, and I think this is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, if we turn around to the side here, you can see that layer of grass on the top and then the soil below and all the different roots and such going through. This is absolutely beautifully done, really nicely painted, and I think the coolest part about it, and you may have seen it as I was rotating it around, you do have kind of faux grass here. It's kind of like a turf texture. This is really cool. Easily one of the nicest display bases I've ever seen that comes with an officially licensed figure. And for a $200 figure at that, I think you're getting a lot for your money. So this is definitely a huge step in the right direction for Trick or Treat Studios and their 1/6 scale lines. Typically, most of the time, they don't even include a display base. So for them to go all out in this fashion, this is super cool. And as you can see, guys, this is kind of mimicking a sidewalk, and then it runs down into the drain here. So this is really nicely done once again. I'm very happy with this. Love how it's painted. Love the fake grass here. Definitely be very careful with the fake grass. You can already see I had a couple blades fall into the grates here, so I'm sure it does fall off pretty easily, so definitely keep that in mind. But with that being said, guys, let's move on to the final accessory. Well, I guess we saved the best for last. Now, I may not consider this an accessory, but this is an alternate head sculpt. As you guys may or may not know, throughout the film, you do mostly see him with the burlap sack on his head. However, this is what his face looks like under that burlap sack, for those of you that don't know. This is a very impressive sculpt, guys. I'm really, really excited about this one. After seeing it in person, all my doubts kind of went out the window. I think they did a great job here. As you can see, he has those creepy looking button-like eyes. Some really nice deep sculpted in detail with the stitching and the lines throughout his pumpkin-like head. Really nicely painted as well, and all the crevices and such. Just a great job, Trick or Treat Studios, with this head sculpt. But it doesn't stop there. You may have caught it as I was rotating it, or may not have, because they did a good job at hiding it, but there is a hinge here. The mouth does hinge open. And as you can see, you have the roof of his mouth there and all of his teeth with all the different cavities and everything. And then on the underside, you see his tongue and all of his teeth down the bottom. So guys, I mean, this is really nicely done. It's not super loose. You can kind of slowly open it to have it in different positions. I think they did a great job. It's just the right amount of tension on the jaw. I just really am a huge fan of this head sculpt. And for those of you who are curious, this does just peg onto a ball joint. So really nicely done. But now, guys, it's time to move on to our figure segment of the video. So let's go grab Sam and see what we think. Okay, now here we have Sam sitting in front of us. Now, I will say, guys, having this guy in hand makes me so happy. Again, I've been waiting for this one for so long. This is kind of a cult classic film at this point. Not everybody has seen it, but those that have, most of them really love it. So this is definitely really cool to have in 6 scale form. I know a lot of people were buying that NECA one that was obviously out of scale, so it's really nice to finally have a in-scale version of this character. But let's take a look around. As I said earlier, guys, you do have the burlap sack style head pre-installed. Of course, you have those button eyes, stitching across the mouth. This is kind of a hard plastic dome surrounded by the sack material, so it feels very durable, which is great to see, because when I saw the initial prototype photos, I was really hoping they didn't cheap out and fill this with foam or something. So definitely really nice to see. Moving it around to the back, you could see really nicely stitched down the back here. Overall, I think they did a great job on this. And again, we do have real string on there as well, which is really nice. Definitely a really nice touch when it comes to realism. As you could see, looking at the onesie, guys, some really beautiful attention to detail with the weathering. As you can see, we kind of have dirt patches on the shoulder, in the armpit area, around the wrist, just all the areas you would kind of expect dirt and grime to be. You can see there's some down the front here as well. Really nicely weathered, and I think it adds a lot to this figure, so I'm definitely glad to see that. Of course, you can also see, as we're talking about the onesie, you have 2 repair patches sewn on the front here. Looks really good, really nicely done in my opinion. As I mentioned earlier, you do have 2 pre-installed hands on the figure, and these are open, relaxed hands. Again, I really do love that kind of wet look towards the fingertips. Definitely really nicely done. Moving it around to the back of the onesie though, guys, you could see we have our butt pouch here. Yeah, that's a butt pouch, that's what I'm calling it, with 2 buttons on each end. Definitely really nicely done. And again, we do have weathering on the back as well. Great to see. You don't want to just see it on the front. You want that to be consistent, so we do have it throughout the back as well. You do have a Velcro strip here on the back so you can open up the onesie. We're going to talk a bit more about that later in the posing segment, because it will come back up in the topic of conversation. But moving down, guys, as you could see, really nicely done, really nicely tailored. Sorry, I had to cut real quick. The 10th plane of the night just flew over and it completely drowned out what I was saying. But anyways, moving down to the feet, you do have hard sculpted plastic feet in here. Obviously, this is going to be a bit loose because it is a onesie and it has these little feet built into the onesie. But there are sculpted plastic feet. I noticed you can kind of just force it into place there with the feet. There is a little patch sent on the front of each one of these, and there is weathering throughout down here as well. And as always, we do have to take a look at our tread, quote unquote, and as you can see, sewn in patches for the bottom of the feet here, and really nice weathering on the feet as well, as you would expect. And I will say this does look like real dirt and grime on the bottom of the feet. So again, the weathering is really, really nicely done on this figure. But guys, the final thing, of course, as always, that I want to get into is the articulation on this figure. With the head, guys, you really just have side-to-side movement. Of course, it will rotate a full 360 if you want it to, but that is very limited. Of course, when you put the pumpkin head sculpt, it will be a bit different because that's a different style head sculpt. This is just limited because it is that circular dome shape. Moving on to the arms, guys, I will let you know the shoulders are extremely stiff, to the point where I almost didn't know if they articulated or not. I had to turn around to the back, and I mentioned this would come up later. When you open up this Velcro, you could see on the inside of the body, part of the onesie at the neck is glued to the neck of the actual figure. My thought on why they glued the onesie to the neck is probably because when you have the regular Sam head sculpt on, it keeps the collar close to the neck and makes it more uniform. So that's probably why they did that. But anyways, I just wanted to share that finding with you guys. But again, you can articulate it at the shoulder. It definitely is very stiff, but once you gain that confidence to pose it, you can pose it. Now, I will say, unfortunately, we do have single jointed arms here. Always hate to see it. Guys, if you're collectors of Trick or Treat Studios stuff and you have other more expensive, like Hot Toys 6-scale figures, you should know by now the bodies from Trick or Treat Studios aren't the best. I will say, unfortunately, with this one, that is the same case here. Trick or Treat really needs to improve these bodies. I feel like every single figure I get from them, I have some sort of issue with the body, whether it's loose, whether they have single jointed arms, whether you have those stiff shoulder joints like we have here on the Sam figure. But overall, guys, definitely think they need to improve on the body. I mean, it is a $200 figure, which is relatively inexpensive for an officially licensed figure, but definitely keep that in mind. In terms of ab crunch, guys, very minimal. It seems to go back more than it does forward, but definitely as much as you would really want, especially if you have them in a sitting pose on that sidewalk base. I think it's definitely doable. In terms of the hip area, you can get a full 90 very easily, as you could see. So again, if you want to have him sitting down on that sidewalk base, which is probably what I'll do, you can definitely achieve that very easily. In terms of the bend at the knees, as you could see, they are very easy to bend. However, they do stop at 90, which once again, come on. single jointed bodies in 2023. I don't know why all of these companies keep doing the single jointed stuff. Definitely would like to see them do better. In terms of the feet, you do have left and right rotation, very minimal rocking, but there is some forward and backward as well. Overall, not too bad on the feet there. And then I almost missed it, as I always do, but the hands, guys, you get full rotation. Of course, you do have a ball joint peg in there, so you do have the up and down posability as well. But overall, guys, definitely not the best body. The figure looks great, as I said earlier, but I do think Trick or Treat still needs to address the bodies that they're doing on these figures, because they're not up to par, especially for a figure that's still $200. So that's definitely a detractor in my opinion. But with that being said, guys, now let me throw Sam in a couple poses and we'll close out this video.
At the end of the day, guys, despite the issues that I have with the body on this figure, I think Trick or Treat Studios did a great job. I think there's a lot to like about this figure. I absolutely love that diorama display base. I love the weathering. I love all the accessories. I love most of the things about this figure. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and I'm out.